Give me a wave.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, it's working.
A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
There you go, yeah, you point it right at,
Yeah.
right at the old mouth hole.
Ha.
Yeah, it's my first time talking into a mic.
We're live. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's Rezzed session on how to make an RPG like Disco Elysium, which I imagine would take longer than the half an hour or so we have to go through. But my name is Alice Bell from Rock, Paper, Shotgun, and I'm joined today by Robert Kurvitz and Helen Hinkbetter.
Helen Hinkbetter, yes.
Sorry, I was just explaining, it's very embarrassing being English. And so, yeah, we are here to talk about Disco Elysium, an incredibly complicated and I mean, I don't even know how to describe it, an RPG that just came out 2 days ago that you've been working on for 5 years. So first question, I guess, how are you both?
I still haven't recovered. I mean, I'm in some kind of parallel world. Like it feels incredibly surreal. And like the first thing when you release a game, like the first feeling you feel is that I have just so much respect for all other game developers. Like this is insane.
I will
the roller coaster.
Never again say anything bad about any game that's been released online or even in private. That's the level of respect you kind of get. Yeah, it's
just up and down, up and down.
So for everyone who's watching at home and who's with us today, can you just maybe each of you give a sort of brief overview of what your role was on the game and what I guess your job was?
So I had double duty as the game's lead writer and lead designer. So everything that isn't visual, I was responsible for. I also did musical direction for the game, and I also sing in the game. Really, I actually sing in the game.
I didn't know that.
I sing backing vocals in a track that you hear, the only track with vocals. And then the vocals are Burn, Baby Burn, Disco Inferno. That's me. So I do some things on it.
Hopefully it's not our game that's going to burn though, so yeah. I'm one of the writers. We had quite many writers. I think together with editors, there were like maybe 7, 8 people involved, 5 writers, and then some more additional writing. But yeah, I was one of the core team of writers, I think.
Best writer.
Thank you.
So when we were originally talking about doing this Q&A, one of the original titles pitched was all the things you have to get wrong before you make a game like Disco Elysium. And obviously, you know, before anyone attempted to make such an ambitious RPG, they'd have a thorough grounding in, you know, coding. They'd have made a lot of games before. So do you want to maybe talk about the previous games that you'd worked on before you made Disco Elysium?
Yeah, several, and before that we went to video game high school and video game university. This was our first, is our first released video game. You have to start somewhere, and we decided to start with 100-hour open world isometric RPG.
Yeah, that's pretty much it though. I would say that in the course of those 5 years, like this game changed so much that it almost feels like we actually already made like one game and then didn't release it, and like this is like just one of the iterations.
We had a lot of theoretical knowledge and a lot of programming philosophers and video game philosophers and analysts and general thinkers, but experience, none of it. But in 5 years, you have a lot of time to acquire that experience. So honestly, by now I feel like a grizzled veteran. Like, yeah, I look at myself in the mirror and I see like, you know, my next phase is I'm gonna fulfill my ultimate fate and become an old man with a ponytail. So that's how veteran I feel. Do you feel like a real video game designer? Like I do.
I'm actually not so sure. I think I'm one of those people who like kind of has the imposter syndrome thing. Like I still feel like, how did I end up doing this? Yeah, because I never ever thought I would end up making video games, because there is no video game industry in Estonia. So we just had to become this video game industry in Estonia. And I'm still like sometimes just waking up and thinking, how did I end up here? And yeah, but it's an absolutely insane industry. And I think one of the things that has surprised me the most is how supportive other game developers are. Like how much you can actually just get knowledge, information from them, and just how much of an inspiration they are. Yeah, that has helped us a lot.
I think the reason why we, well, there are many reasons why we decided to form a video game studio. So the raw material for forming Zaum came from a cultural organization uniting artists and writers and poets, musicians, who had a shared kind of aesthetic of, I guess, futurism is one possible word, but futurism both in, you know, new forms of culture and technology, and our backgrounds being geeks basically, but also futurism as in like 1920s futurism, like the futurists. You know, the Russian futurists and Khlebnikov and Mayakovsky and stuff like that. So in both those ways we were futurists, and futurists are always looking for the piece of future that only they can build. So a missing piece from the kind of tapestry or of the house that is the future. So. As odd as it may seem, we looked at global culture as it was, and to our own amazement, discovered that the thing that's missing from there, that only we can make, is a game in the vein of Planescape Torment or even Fallout 1, but with what we thought would be a completely fresh angle for that. So it was the result of very long strategic analytic thinking about, you know, what do we have to give to the world where we can all participate.
Yeah. Plus there is also the aspect that, you know, when you're trying to make culture or participate in it, then doing it alone is an extremely terrifying experience. So we asked, what is it that we could do together? Like, where can we put together writing, art, sound? And the answer was video games for us. So, I mean, it is still incredibly scary to release a game or to release any piece of, I don't know, something creative into the world. But doing it together with other people, I guess that was how we decided to do it, and yeah.
Yeah, there's strength in numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm terrified every day just writing a terrible 500-word article about a video game. So
actually, a very good article about
Thank
video
you.
games. A very well paced and structured article.
It's been mentioned a lot, and I think in almost every interview that Zaum do, it's mentioned that the roots of Disco Elysium, part of that is in a sort of custom TRPG Dungeons & Dragons setting that you've been playing for years. I mean, Helen, were you part of that, or were you just looking at this group of crazy nerds and sort of...
No, actually, I was. I haven't known. I mean, there are some people in Zaum which have known each other like since high school, I think. You and some other writers. I joined a bit later, but it was still when we were still thinking about only doing the cultural thing in Estonian language. So yeah, I think I have been part of it, definitely.
Yeah, so Helen hasn't had the honor of of sort of playing it pen and paper style, because when Helen got on board with our thing, we were already gearing up to do it as a video game, and turns out you don't have time to do anything else when you're making a video game. You literally don't have time to go to the toilet for 5 years. That is what you're gonna feel like. Like, for 5 years, every time I go to the toilet in the middle of the day, like not at night, then a certain serene calmness fills you. But at day, I thought, how can I do it as fast as possible so I can get back to writing 1 million words that need to be written? And it's not even a joke. So yeah, not a lot of time to play pen and paper from there.
Well, let's move on to talk about, I think probably my favorite bit of Disco Elysium, which is the skill system. So how many people have played Disco Elysium in the audience? It's a good number. A lot of people in the studio in the front row with hands up. How many people want to play Disco Elysium? Yeah, there you go. So
do it this weekend. I can say with confidence that it will not have game-breaking bugs for you.
For this weekend.
I know you're intelligent people, so you don't play, 60-plus hour open world RPGs on release day and the next day from there. But I would say that this weekend it's safe. It's pretty solid.
So Disco Elysium is an RPG, for anyone who doesn't know, where you play a cop. You wake up with an apocalyptic hangover. You cannot remember anything, literally anything. You can't remember your name. You can't remember where you are, why you're there, the history of the place where you are, anything. And you also can't really remember what sort of person you are. And so part of the game is becoming a person again. And part of that is to do with the skills. So the skill set is 24 different things. Many are not sort of recognizable from what you'd expect from regular RPG skills. And they also argue with you and have a go at you as you're playing the game. So it's an incredibly complex system. They all have different sort of personalities of them, all these skills, like encyclopedia, which just remembers facts that it will yell inside your head while you're talking to someone. What's your favorite skill? That's instead of me telling you.
They're sort of like party members, but you carry them inside your head, and they have a parliament. And then if you put points into one, then you give votes and more voice to these members of the parliament, and they start doing power maneuvers on you, which you might not even agree with, but they're going to take you places.
It's a much better explanation than I get. You should be a writer, Robert.
Yeah, I had like 3 years of show floor experience, chiseling it into like a perfect nugget.
Turns out it's actually like really hard to explain to people what kind of a game it is. At least that's a show floor.
You're not allowed to say that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's really easy to explain it. It's really simple. You do not need 200 IQ.
Yeah, your skills talk to you.
The skills talk to you, man. It's cool.
Yes. And Hangover Simulator, that's the other word we say.
What is it? We had a recommendation from Lad Life, or what is it called? Like
Lad Bible?
Lad
yeah,
Bible,
it's one of those viral Facebook videos where some lads
really?
are doing some, I don't know, lad stuff.
So basically, Liam Gallagher basically said, play it.
Yeah. No, it was really odd that they were talking about it, but really great as well, I guess.
But of the skills, yeah. To be stupid enough to think that you can do something, like to be stupid enough to think that you can write a novel, or write a song or anything, you need to have this kind of delusion in your head where you look at something that's already done, in our case, skill systems, and you need to think, oh, I can easily do better than that. Like, you know, I have a lot of ideas how to do better this one, like how to improve on this. No one really sets out to do things if they think they're going to be impossible to achieve. So you need a bit of like misguided assuredness there. So one of the things I thought was going to be pretty easy, and it turned out to actually be easy too, unlike many of the other things that I thought are going to be easy, was that I was looking at, when you look at skill systems classically, there's been a lot of really cool stuff done with skill systems when it comes to numbers and balancing, dice roll structures, even artwork, and especially their use in combat and so on. But when you look at skills from Western RPGs, from pen and paper, even the skills that are sort of RPG mechanisms that are bolted onto like first-person shooters to give them an RPG element. One thing that kind of struck me is that, okay, very interesting stuff is being done, but the skills themselves, are they interesting? Can you do interesting things? And then the answer is quite often no. Like you would have one out there interesting skill that's like, oh, wow, I'm very interested, I'm intrigued by that one. But actually human beings have very wild and varied skill sets other than just, you know, agility and sharpshooting and so on. So I guess we had kind of like 3 or 4 really, really nice ones that I think turned out very nicely too. What's your favorite skill of us?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn between Inland Empire, which is your imagination, and Shivers. I think the Shivers is the most special one. It's basically because one of the things that we also wanted to do with our game was that we want to bring literature in it. Like, how do you just how can you just describe the weather and do
how can you have long-winded landscape
exactly so that it wouldn't become a bore. And Shivers, I guess, is our answer for that. But it's also, in this world, it's the city talking to you. So sometimes it can get almost paranatural and really mysterious because, oddly enough, the hints that the city gives you tie into the case, especially some side cases. And in that way, it's really justified as well. So I would say Shivers is my favorite. What's yours?
Shivers is right up there. I really like the idea that so we're also quite physical, and then we sort of want to narrate what's happening in your bowels of your character and the nitty-gritty of existing through a skill system. A sort of Vitruvian understanding of skills. So I like the idea in Shivers that your hair follicles are receivers, as if, you know, radio antennas to the atmosphere around you, and that you can actually receive messages from the city through them. This is a completely residual and useless part of the human body, like hair anywhere, even, you know, like on the back of your head or like on your chest. Why is it there? So I think it's a pretty funny revelation that you can get like they can work like antennas.
Plus, it's a way to make the really physical characters still have some kind of intelligence. So, yeah.
Yeah. We also wanted the kind of dwarven archetype to be more colorful and have stuff. But yeah, visual calculus is a big favorite because it has really flashy animation. Our artists, like, visual calculus in our game is a kind of forensic skill, so you can reconstruct events that have happened, physics and so on. And this makes for some really, really cool art overlays that kind of illustrate a car crash or footprints or bullet trajectories. I guess those are the company favorites.
Yeah, visual calculus also has the high production value, so yeah, a lot of money has put into that skill.
And they all have such different like voices. I feel like you could tell them apart even if they didn't have their name on them. What was the process of writing those? Did you divide them up? Was it like Helen looks after these four, and or did you all sort of collaborate on them?
No, because we all were writing the main character. It actually became really, oddly enough, really easy to write those really small snippets of different voices in the character's head. So yeah, how we divided the writing was that I think everyone has written something in every character, like in every NPC, but we had some areas like where I worked more and some other writers worked more.
I guess it was easy because our art director made them really characteristic portraits. So they look like submerged facets of yourself. Like looking at in RPGs, you see your character's portrait all the time. Yeah, that's it. But while they're speaking, they seem like aspects of that portrait, but X-ray vision into it, or like an impressionistic version of it, of what this character would look like if you would only see the expression of them being afraid of something in there. So when you have eyes, a mouth, or even lungs and so on, each writer's definition of what those eyes or what that thing would sound like is quite the same.
I've actually even noticed that some people who are already playing our game, in forums, they are kind of writing their own dialogues with those skills, because there is something really just inspiring about writing those for those characters.
It should be like I'm not a big fan of creative writing classes, but they should really employ that idea. Maybe creative writing classes would become funner through it. Writing voices for really abstract shapes and skills.
Yeah, I did a module of creative writing at university. It's terrible.
And yet you are able to write.
I did want to briefly touch on the thought cabinet as well, because that's a really unique thing to Disco Elysium as well, which is essentially, I guess, an inventory of thoughts that you can have, whereby I, for example, just because I picked sort of left-wing dialogue choices, became a communist in the game. Like my cop became a communist.
Congratulations, comrade.
Thank you. So was that something that you always knew you were going to have from very early on? Did it take a lot of iteration to get it right?
Massive iterations. I think now that the game is out and receiving, I would say, a warm reception. I think I can divulge a bit of difficulties also in the process because I think we pulled it off with that one, but there were large stretches of time when it was threatening to become an albatross feature or a quagmire feature, which is a feature in video game development that needs seemingly endless revisions and review cycles to become understandable and fun and intuitive, to even get the menu together in a way that makes some kind of sense, to get the art there and so on. So, for example, I think Josh Sawyer called ship combat in Pillars of Eternity 2 a kind of quagmire feature. There were times that I was really frightened that it's going to become one, that we don't pull it out of the quicksand. And that one really came together on the 11th hour. And I like it now. I see people posting screenshots of completely filled fort cabinets. So in our game, you can put skill points into upgrading your skills, but you can also buy slots to put thoughts into. So it's a kind of shared currency between perks and skills. So you can get like really quick feedback on, did these guys like it? Did you think it was worth spending your experience on? Was it fun enough for that, or did you just boost your skills? And then we're seeing pretty much completely filled up fort cabinets. So it looks like the gambit paid off. But yeah, it was tough stuff.
Yeah, I think it was also something that people were really expecting from us, because that's like one of the first things we talked about, like, oh, hey, we have this cool feature, thought cabinet. And then at some point we realized, well, God damn it, we can't release it like that. I mean, it's barely there, but we have already talked about it to everyone. But yeah, I think it's now came together.
I think a huge challenge in that, and an unsung hero in that, was Anton Vill, the concept artist who illustrated the fort cabinet. He worked on this tapestry that sort of makes up the icons for it for 10 months. Like, it was 10 months of, it is an incredibly detailed painting. So the art assets to kind of represent this idea of the of having forts as also almost items that you can loot from the world. It needed to be flashy. Like, when you say we have fort cabinet, you know, people see flashy things. Oh, forts, what would they be? They seem almost as if each one of them would need to be animated. Maybe they fight each other, you know. And when we were trying to do it minimalistically, the visuals weren't selling the idea, and the writing wasn't brought to life by it. So it needed to swallow a lot of money before it grew up.
Do you think if you hadn't talked about it publicly before you'd sort of finalized it, you might have cut it?
Definitely not, though. That sadly was never on the table, because one of the strange things that happened to us during development was that it was really difficult to cut things, because the initial design of the game was very, very solidly full of a lot of interdependencies. So if we were to have bailed on the fort cabinet, you wouldn't have gotten loot from talking to these people. What do we do with our reputation system now? You know, where is the flash and the bang and the serotonin kick going to come from? It would have felt barren. So it was also quintessential. It was a quintessential quagmire which we needed to work until it feels like a crown instead of an apron.
Yeah, I guess that was also like one of the design questions we had, because it is really a reading heavy game. Then how do we get the player out of dialogue for a moment? How do they feel like, yeah, I really got something from this dialogue, literally? And thoughts were the answer to that. So you can just play around, really think about what kind of a character do you want to be in this game. I think we should also a bit talk about other things we did to get the player away from the dialogue. I think the orb system is also one of the things. And like, if any of you are going to be playing it this weekend, then I also have a small tip, I think. Really try to just role play it in a sense that we have so many items like boombox where you can actually listen to some dance music and cigarettes, stuff like that. Try to just, I don't know, sometimes find a place where you can enjoy the really beautiful art and the really beautiful music and just kind of take it all in. Because quite often when we are playing an RPG, we just get into this tunnel vision of completing tasks and getting everything done. And in some ways, it's good because it means that, okay, you're interested in where the story is going. But then again, I think that's like where the player intelligence comes in. It's like, do you know how to kind of pace it out? Do you know how to really role play? Like, okay, this is the place where I'm going to smoke one cigarette, or just stand here and look at the beautiful sea, stuff like that.
You can do an amazing amount of emergent storytelling and participation by simply choosing if you're going to run or walk in an environment. What I found was very interesting is not double clicking all the time to run, to just actually sneak around the place, and then listen to a bit of techno on the beach and have a cigarette and maybe even something more illegal. It's the kind of tools that we needed the player to have to put air into the experience. The coolest stories that we get are where players use that air and pose, under the rain and kind of play with the toys as if playing with Legos in a really beautiful, ruined, weird city.
I do want to talk about, the environment. Revachol is, the world has, 6,000 years of continuous history, which is a lot, but the game takes place in a very specific kind of moment, it feels. The part of the city that you find yourself in is on a kind of knife edge where there's an incredibly powerful trade union. There's a real strong sense of community because out of necessity, because everyone else has kind of left the area behind. It feels like there's a kind of drug problem because, what else do you have in an economically depressed area? Why choose to, because it's not, I wouldn't call it a feel-good game in many respects, right? So why choose to make it about, a kind of poor area rather than being like a cool cop? Like, because if you succeed at the game, all you get to do is just continue being a cop. Like, that's the win state, right?
Yep. And then you have the next case to do. I think you had an interesting comment about the darkness of the location the other day.
Trying to remember which comment. I think in many ways, because when you're writing a story or kind of reading a story, then quite often as readers and writers as well, we have these favorite emotions. I certainly do. Like, we all like hope, we all like sadness, especially the kind of sadness where it's about your ex something or your love leaving you or stuff like that.
Literature is really good at that.
Yeah. And then there are emotions that we don't actually really like to experience that much. One is definitely whenever you see some kind of like really politically racist characters, you just really feel disgust. Yeah. But I think that in some ways it's also important to show them in games, even though, it might turn some people off. But only if you show that disgust and all those kinds of negative, really repulsive emotions, to the really to the human kindness starts shining out. And I've also noticed that our game really depends on what kind of character are you playing. So if you're going for the sensitive character, your main character sees a lot more beauty in those really poor people who've been, quite frankly, fucked by the capital. I'm sorry, now I just.
I think I don't know if we have potty.
Yeah. So it really depends on what kind of character are you building, what kind of game are you getting.
It is. Yeah, there's a strange thing about it. If you, for example, if you have high psyche, you can do things like go on a date, which is really lovely suddenly, and your skills are telling you, even suggesting you not to say things that seem kind of funny or assholeish, but just say, don't say that. Like, don't ruin the moment by that. And they can also navigate you through really dark situations. But still successfully. So, for example, when you're a cop and you're giving death notifications to people, police officers say it's the hardest part of the job to go to a family member and do that. So the experience is much different if you have a high psychic character who succeeds at the skill check to successfully say that. So there are in a strange way, character builds for whom the city is much darker than other ones. But I think the reason why Martinez, the part of the city where you're from, is so conflicted and that oftentimes dark, is to reflect the main character. So it seems to the main character that it is this way. It might not actually be like this. To not be solipsistic about your own suffering takes like literally upgrading your skills in this game. So to a person who's going through a lot of tough stuff, the world is gonna look, you know, a bit hellish at times. To someone else it can look pretty sunshiny and pretty nice. I guess to mega rich light bending guy, like there's a character in our game who's called mega rich light bending guy. He's having a whale of a time. And there are other people who are enjoying it too, despite it all. So yeah, it's dependent on skills. But I mean, there's no qualms about it. Martinez is a really dark area of the game. It is the scene of a military maneuver that doomed the city, basically, or a battle that was lost 50 years ago. So it's sort of ground zero for the failure of the city of Rezzed and for many political failures. There's even a long side quest where you can perhaps find out why this place is such a miserable place, and there might even be, as we call, supranatural reasons for it being so. So perhaps there's even a curse upon Martinez.
Yeah, there is. I don't want to spoil too much, but you can find an abandoned office where a team of artists were trying to make a really great RPG, and your partner says, "My God, it seems the less money they had, the more ambitious they became," which made me laugh quite a lot.
Yeah, it's a game that has, and we didn't want to be fourth wall breaking with it and so on. It's a game that has quite a long side mission that was actually written by you. That has a kind of radio game studio in there. So I think it's one of the first games to have a side quest where you can actually
read about radio game developers. Yeah, I guess there were like really heavy hints that it is basically about our experience as well. So, but yeah, I guess the side mystery, I think, at least to me, obviously, because I wrote it as well, it really ties into the main character as well, because there is the question, like, why are you so hungover? Like, how did you lose your memory? And I've even seen here and there people thinking that, yeah, it feels a bit weird that someone can just lose their memory like that. And the side content, side case, kind of holds one possible keys to that.
Yeah, there's a moment in the end where where you can say, what do you think? Why are you a ludicrous amnesiac detective? And then just like for the people who haven't played it yet, I know a video game where the main character is an amnesiac. Sounds like something that you might have seen before. And I had my own reservations about using that after Planescape Torment did it basically perfectly. But I think we found like one last twist on it. There's never one last twist on it, but one of the next two last twist. And the way we did it is that you sort of need to answer why. You have, it depends on, someone might even think that there's a limp-wristed critical theory, capital criticism reason to it, which is also put out there. It's really limp-wristed and unsatisfactory, but hey, you can do that. Or it can have like a supernatural reason to it. And even we also like to use the word extra physical reason to it. So near the end of the game, there's a point where you have like 9 dialogue options to say what the hell happened to you, why was that, and it's sort of up to you to explain.
We've got a little bit of time. Right, yeah, we've got time for some questions now, if anyone has any. Yeah, there we go. Got hands going up.
Hi there. I'm really curious, because you have a group of writers. Where do they get their inspiration from? How do you filter that? And how do you structure all their input to create one cohesive story?
Music.
Inspiration,
Yeah.
definitely.
Music is the one thing writers are not capable of doing. And in my opinion, all writers are failed rock stars. I am like literally a failed rock star. I tried to make a band for like 10 years. I never talk about it. The structures of music and compositions of music and pacing of music and the emotions of music. It's incredible how much writers listen to music while they write to get themselves into a certain mood.
Yeah. Plus, like the score that this game has from British Sea Power is absolutely fantastic, and at least I definitely listen to it while writing. So I think this is also like what gave us all the idea of what kind of emotion is going on here. But yeah, there definitely also were like more difficult parts. Like one of the hardest parts of making an RPG is that whenever someone leaves or just leaves the company, you kind of still have to get the information from them, and like this kind of, because there are so many story states that just leave with them, and you just try to somehow I don't know, bring it all together.
This was a sudden turn towards the darker.
No, I don't mean that, because we did. We did have like quite many people writing, doing the additional writing as well. Obviously, you're going to have like many people contributing when you're trying to write a 1 million word game. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've only now that I've gotten it out, I'm looking back, and if I think about what games we were inspired by, I've always, up until this point in interviews, I've always said pen and paper RPGs, just desktop playing. It's sort of attempt to bottle the desktop experience. It really goes back to the roots of RPGs as trying to bring the kind of wild experimentation and personal approach of desktop role playing to a single user on a computer. And I've always also said, and we've also all said, Planescape Torment, but I'm actually surprised at how inspired we actually were by the first Fallout. I would even say, in a weird way, it more tries to be the first Fallout than Planescape Torment. The complete unity of atmosphere and mission, where every piece of the menus of the first Fallout told the story of this ruined world of this after this great cataclysm, and the freedom to do things in any order that you had in this world, almost like sometimes breaking the game by doing that. So although we don't have turn-based combat like Fallout did, I'm more and more, as time goes by, beginning to understand that this was sort of, for me, most of all a reaction to being 14, 15 and playing for the first Fallout for the first time. And later feeling that the direction games have gone after that hasn't really brought me that the next step in whatever I was beginning to expect from the 21st century. So yeah, the first Fallout 2.
We've got time for one more question.
All right, thanks. You mentioned that you started off with like a group of creative people, writers, artists, musicians. How do you go from that to a fully fledged game studio? How do you get the technical know-how? And how did you end up making that transition?
We had to learn to wake up at 7 o'clock every day for 5 years. So there's something that bohemians don't have to do, and that's wake up at 7 o'clock every day for 5 years. So we lost a couple of good comrades to simply not being able to do office work, which is the price you have to pay. if you have a vision of this scope, then you need to go and put in the mind-numbing, scary, boring hours of actually writing every word these characters are gonna do. So I guess discipline was a very serious part of it. Most of us, if not all of us, had to quit drinking alcohol.
Absolutely, yeah. Or just, I don't know, hanging out with friends. Kind of quit that as well. Hope they take me back now, though. Yeah. Okay, that was really grim from me. But no, how did we get the know-how? I think it was from just trial and error. Like.
Turns out that you can hire programmers.
Yeah.
And you can hire good programmers, and you can learn to become a better producer. We had, I think our programmer credits are 21 people long. We had massive help during most of the game's production from really good Estonian programmers, none of which had, from the first group, actually released a software product, but we're talking really, really smart people here. Of course, during 5-year development cycles, you need to shift out programmers. There are very few programmers who are able to look at the same code for 5 years. So during the last year, we had really, really huge help from what we like to call the first Polish light cavalry squadron, 15 Polish programmers from a white label company who we credited for programming the game. So you need to learn to, as a designer, you need to learn to think as a programmer, not to trip them, not to give them false bad orders, you know, and then you also need to learn to program and take responsibility for that. But yeah, we had, it was incredibly tough. That was, I think, without a question, the toughest part of it, getting the programming might that is needed for that, and for that we are eternally grateful to our Polish brethren and our Estonian brethren and too.
Okay, that's all the time we've got.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Disco Elysium out now, and play it this weekend apparently, because that's when it will be in a solid state, right?
It was in a pretty solid state before too, but it's going to be like especially hard-boiled by this weekend.
I mean, it's a very good game. So everyone in the audience who said they wanted to play it should go and play it. Round of applause. Thank you for Robert and Helen.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.